And we're live. Welcome to the Markout Movie Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Brandon Spivey with, and you go ahead and say it.
Aaron Whitlow.
And we have a special guest today, former professional wrestler, indy, and promoter. I don't want to forget the promoter part. Former promoter, Joseph Monk. Welcome.
Nice to meet you guys. Good to be here.
So, I guess I should start it off, Aaron, or do you want to start? I'm running things. I'll start.
Yeah, I go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead and start, brother.
All right. So I was wanting to ask Joseph, we've talked about it a little bit, but when you were your little kid, get into, fandom of wrestling, and I'm going to get excited. I'm going to get animated, and I apologize ahead of time. But what company did you enjoy watching as a kid?
Truthfully, when I started out, one of the first things I've ever seen was I came a little late in the game as far as wrestling. I was in a small town. Most of the time it was like basketball and things like that. I moved out here and wrestling was the thing. It was 1998 and people were nuts about wrestling over here. And so I thought, well, I'll get on board. So I tuned into Monday Night Raw one night, and I seen The Rock. And he's out there with his belt, and he's got his, $100,000 shirt on and all that stuff. And he's talking about being the corporate champion. And with the flip of a switch, I'm like, man, this guy's a really bad dude. And he turns on McMahon, and he says, I'm no longer the corporate champion. I'm going to be the people's champion, lays a rock bottom. A little bit of this action, throws that elbow, and I don't think I stopped watching ever since. I was hooked. I love the whole spectacle of it all. It was amazing. The crowd was explosive, and but WWF, that was my mainstay. I flipped back and forth here and there. WCW, I followed it more. I did more of my homework as I got a little older on WCW, but WWF and ECW, and of course any indie show I could go catch at the time.
Yeah.
Good. So when you mentioned WCW, who was some of your biggest influences like in that promotion? You said you did your homework. Did you kind of model your gimmick after certain workers that you saw on there?
Well, there was a few workers that, I was really intrigued with when I first started wrestling. As far as WCW, Sting, of course, was real hot, but it took me a long time to really appreciate that I was far into the business before I really could see the gimmick behind it. As a fanboy, it's extremely hard to draw that line of kayfabe and gimmicks versus real athleticism and talent. And when you really get in there and kind of feel it here and there and take the bumps and take the hits, you kind of look at wrestling in a whole different light. And in the beginning, I was all about flash and show. Shawn Michaels, of course, was a huge influence on me. Can't go wrong there.
You can't.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably my biggest influence starting out. But as I really started getting into it, I got more into technical style wrestling. As a big guy, I found that I could move a lot quicker and a lot more agile than some of the other big guys I worked with. And I like the technical style. Kurt Angle really caught my eye. William Regal, Chris Benoit, people like that. Chris Jericho, of course. So, really, and as far as like the gimmick, I'd have to go Jericho all the way. I was all about the rock star lifestyle and the rock star gimmick. Still am, so,
Good gimmick. And, and I'm going to give it over to Brandon here in a moment, but yeah, that's a good gimmick. I enjoy, you mentioned my favorite brand at that point, promotion at the time was ECW. I found ECW late one night. It felt like something I shouldn't be watching.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
Came on, and I was like, oh man, they just put Francine through through a table, or it just was so crazy. Pitbull number two, Gary Pittman with the halo and them shaking him. I was like,
Holy
what am I
smokes.
watching? And
Yeah.
and I just was like, and I couldn't. It's hard for me to go back to like say WWF or WCW even, because I felt like they were more tame when it came to like ECW. For me was like the outlaw professional wrestling. What were your thoughts on that brand, that promotion?
Oh man, and it's funny you mentioned that. Whenever me and my buddy, my partner, William Hightower, I hope he's watching. He's a great guy. He was my road dog. We started everything together, and we ended everything together. When we started our promotion, it was called Real Extreme Wrestling, and that was the whole gimmick. We wanted extreme style wrestling. We loved ECW. We fell in love with it. The not just the gimmicks, but the storytelling was so captivating. It felt so real. I love WWF storytelling, but even going back and watching a lot of that stuff now, not everything was gold in the Attitude Era, despite what everybody says. And then I love it. Don't get me wrong, but there was a lot of stuff you had to wade through to get to those beautiful golden moments. ECW was at the time at its complete height. It was like this tapestry of beautiful storytelling, violent wrestling. I mean, complete, like you said, outlaw shows. And that's what we were. We were a bunch of freaking outlaws trying to put a wrestling show on. And we loved the extreme style. That's exactly what we were into at the time. ECW was definitely our go-to promotion as far as inspiration when we started our own deal. Then a lot of Japanese wrestling, them boys go hard.
Man, yeah, Japanese is a totally different game too. Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna bring it back to the beginning for you. When you said you were gonna do this for a living, what was that experience like? First, saying I'm gonna do this, but the training, what was that like for you?
Well, a lot of times in school, we would have these. Me and my buddy would talk about, well, we're gonna wrestle, and of course, everybody, nah, that's never gonna happen, and you'd get a lot of BS, so to speak, as far as that's concerned. Well, something in me and in my buddy, that just drove us more. We would wrestle in the hallways. We'd constantly get in trouble for wrestling in the hallways, throw each other into lockers or gimmick a punch or something. And next thing you know, we're off to the principal's office because, that's just what we like to do. Well, when I think it was like 2002, I'm working at a jeans factory and my buddy is opening a Subway, helping open a Subway, managing the whole deal. And this fair comes to town in Russellville, and they're going to hold this wrestling show. It's Bad to the Bone Wrestling. They're no longer going right now, but I'll let you do the research on why that is. It's not a great story, but but they come to town, and I get a call from my wife, not at the time, my girlfriend at the time, but she calls me up and she says, hey, they're having wrestling at the fair. And I just got off work. My buddy's working nights. And I'm like, man, I said, I got to go check this wrestling out. And I call him up. I said, dude, you got a fake sick, call in. I don't care what you got to do. We got to get to this show. So we go to Russellville, and we're there maybe 2 or 3 hours before the show, and we track down the promoter. Well, he's just about everything you'd imagine a promoter would be. He's definitely slick in the business. I don't want to say anything too harsh, but he knew what he was doing when he saw a couple of rubes walking up. And we're like, man, we really want to get into the business. Is there any way you can do it? And we thought going in there we were going to get put in the show that night. Naivety.
Yeah.
Well, he says, I'll tell you what, he says, you pay me $100 each and I'll let you bump around after the show. We were sold, dude. $100, done. We get in there after the show. We watch the show. It's real gritty, man. It was real kind of a mud show kind of deal. but it was real fun. I like the guys, the guys in the performance center. They were all good. So, you know, real great bunch of wrestlers, but just the atmosphere was real gritty. But I kind of liked it, you know. We get in this ring, and it's an old hard wooden ring, and it has this bump padding on it that's like carpet padding, that green and yellow stuff that's under the carpet.
She knows she told me to do.
It's
I'm
real
doing a
rough.
podcast.
She.
Well, we
I'll talk to you
start
later.
bumping around,
Come back.
and I tell you what,
Put the bed up.
you go all elbows and all, you know, knees, and you get scared and stuff like that, and it beats you up. This ring was as hard as bumping on a gym floor. It was ridiculous. Well, we bumped around and we trained quite a bit, and of course we had a lot of guys coming in there like, we'll never see you guys again. We'll never see you again.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know, we'll show you. They were going to be in Central City the next week, and we planned on going up. Well, so they took about 2 or 3 hours and pretty much just beat the crap out of us and had a good time, and we loved it. And we got out of there next day, bruised and broken, and called my buddy up. I said, what do you think, man? He said, man, it was one of the best things I ever experienced. I said, me too. Let's go to Central City next week. And by then it was gone, man.
Hey, that's pretty awesome. Sorry I had to get up. I had a neighbor come to the door. I never know what's going to happen on the Markout Movie podcast. But essentially, so you pretty much came in the business as a mark, essentially, and they they kind of ribbed you a bit, just but you learned through that, though. You learned through that. Who do you consider to be your official trainer, like, or did you just learn from the vets in the back and just going out there day in, day out?
With it being so, I mean, I hate to use the word outlaw so much, but it was basically what it was. With it being like that, you get trained by some of the veterans in the background. There are a couple of guys that kind of mainstay, but it's whoever can teach you a little bit more and take you a little further. First time we trained was with a group of guys that I've never seen them after that. You know, they beat us up a little bit, razzed us, sent us on our way. After that, I've never seen them again. So we get in Central City, and the ring has changed. They had purchased a steel ring with official bump padding, vinyl, canvas, the whole nine. It was like WWE professional type ring. And that was a whole different ball game. It was like bumping on a freaking cloud after feeling that hard ring in Russellville. But anyway, sorry, I digress. But you'd have guys like Vic the Bruiser, who is still wrestling to this day.
Vic, I know Vic. Yeah,
he's a great guy, very, very salty veteran, and he knows what he's doing. He would basically walk us through our first few matches. We wanted to do like crazy spots and things like that, just like you would as a fan, you know. You think you just go out there and blow the house down, but he kind of settled us down. He said, look, this is how you got to do things. He laid it out for us. He walked us through the program, what hits, what don't hit, what sells, what don't sell. And honestly, he was probably one of the bigger influences on me. Simon Says was another good wrestler. I don't know if he wrestles now, but he was another fantastic trainer. The promoter's son, J.C. Bailey, which he went on to do like some pretty crazy CZW kind of stuff and death matches and stuff. He was one of our trainers too at the time before his untimely passing. But those were some of the big ones. Manslaughter. He was a true to life giant. This man was 7 foot tall. He was huge, and he had hands like a frying pan. And he loved nothing more than to get us in there and put us through chop class and things like that. But he was a really good, knowledgeable mind. And I'm afraid I'm leaving a few guys out, but there were so many in and out. But those were the main guys that really stuck with us the whole time.
Yeah, there's so many of them. I could tell you some Vic the Bruiser stories too. I got trained by my friend. He's been my friend since high school. Randall Shane. Uh, at one point, I think he's going by the Southern Superstar, but I don't know what he's going by now. But yeah, like he trained me a bit. But then, like at one point, I was working in a promotion here with JW Wildfire,
Oh
and
yeah, I know JW.
yeah, and Vic. And so I was working where I was. All right, so I was working where I was Vic's manager, and Vic was working Rob G. Rock, God rest his soul, and Rob. So Vic fed Rob to the ropes for me to choke him when he got the ref's attention, so he can get some more heat. Choke the ref, choke Rob a bit, and I was a rook, and so I totally missed the feed, and I was just too busy, razzing the audience, like like trying to get them, riled up or whatever. And Vic,
That
after the
deep,
match,
boy.
Vic ripped me and said, "Look, whenever somebody, you gotta pay attention to your guy in the ring." And he says, if your guy is down, then you need to be like just like panicking and just frustrated. And he said, but if your guy is winning, that's when you shine. That's when you like a peacock. You walk around there, but pay attention to the action because you never know when I'm gonna feed you, you know. And I learned that lesson. It wasn't the hard way. It was good. It was good veteran advice that a green guy like me didn't know. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, I like Vic.
He's a very knowledgeable guy. He taught us a lot about respect. We're doing the show in Elkton, and it's the first time that any wrestling show has been in Elkton in like 10 years, and the last one that actually was here in Elkton. Well, we're at the high school gym, and there's this young kid that's he was kind of like a ring crew lackey. He'd do security or set up the ring or do whatever needed to be done, an errand boy. And he was walking around with his pants hanging down to his knees, and Vic didn't like that too much. He says, hey, we're in a new town. You need to show some respect, pull your pants up, look respectable. He said, you're representing not only this company, he said, you're representing the boys. And, respect was like number one on the list when it comes to the locker room, respect above all. And, some people had to learn the hard way and some people took it easy. Well, next thing you know, about 20 minutes later, this kid's walking around. Vic's walking us through our match for that night, and he's saying, all right, this is the kind of stuff you need to do here and things like that. This is only like our third match ever. And this kid walks by with his pants undone, and Vic takes him by the collar of the shirt and gives him one good crack in the jaw and pulls his pants up and sends him on his way. And he said, it's about respect. And I'm like, hey, I learned a valuable lesson in that moment, and I didn't even have to feel it.
Man, yeah, I seen Vic, and I'm sorry, Brandon, I'll let you back.
All right,
But
man.
I seen Vic once to give his kid. He's green. He does wrestling here in Bowling Green, and the kid missed the spot, or he was stiff, and stiff Vic a bit. He gave that kid a receipt. It just and I don't know if he ever stayed in the business, but it was just like I was like, oh, but it was about respect. Like you're taught to go when you come in, you taught to shake every guy's hand. The shake. You taught to shake every guy's hand. You taught to, before you leave, you talk to every guy because you don't want to slight no one. You want to respect everybody. And the love that like when being in the back of a locker room, being in back with people, like I sat and talked to Rob G, Gypsy Joe, these cats like that, and just you learn so much just by being around them. Corey Williams, you know.
Absolutely. And as far as I got a funny story about, stiff arming Vic myself. I went the opposite way. I'm in the middle of a battle royal in Bardstown. And my spot was to go take him in the corner and do a couple of forearms to the chest. Well, I get in there, and it was drilled in my mind that you don't stiff a veteran. So I went the other way. And of course, I made it look really bad. So then he turns around and I start forearming in the back. Again, not to his liking. So he takes me by the chest, by my shirt, throws me in the corner, and lights me up with double hand chops up and down my chest, my back, my stomach. I mean, I was beat red all over. And of course, he explained to me later on, it was all about he said, when you're doing that stuff, he says, in professional wrestling, you have so much room between a crowd and your ring. But in indies, they're right there. I said, they can reach out and touch you. They're going to see if you're feigning in a shot. They're going to see if you're laying it in. They're going to see if you're bull crap. Sorry. But, that was, again, a valuable lesson taught by Victor Bruiser. I mean, he's a heck of a guy in the indie business, and definitely a tribute to everything in that business, especially around here.
Amen, brother.
All right, I'm going to ask the question, and we've had a little bit of talks about this before, but I'm going to ask your personal thoughts, but not just your personal thoughts, people you wrestled with, their thoughts on this guy. You probably know where I'm going with it, but Hulk Hogan, what is Aaron's like, oh my God, no, he didn't. But what is the perception of him with guys from the indies? Are they, they think the world of him? They hate him?
That's a tricky question right there. I mean, Hulk Hogan, my goodness, he just pulled out the freaking big guns.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe he went there.
Well, I mean, back in the day, you can't, as a wrestler, and any wrestler that I have known or do know, there are certain people that you always pay respect to paving the way. Hulk Hogan is definitely one of those. He is one of the greats as far as opening things up. But at the same time, if you really dig deep and think about Hulk Hogan being the symbolization of shutting down a lot of territories and things like that, he really wasn't the best thing for the indie business. So a lot of guys look at it in that sense too. Me personally, I have a lot of respect for what he's done and the accolades and the things that he's accomplished. I don't necessarily say that I have a lot of respect for how he's gotten there, because a lot of it was backhanded politics and backstage things that should almost never be done. But money's a funny thing. It'll make people do crazy things, and fame will make you do even crazier things. And Hulk Hogan, man, he wanted it all. Of course, in lieu of his recent discrepancies, I just cannot stand. I was raised not to stand for things like that, and I don't stand for things like that. So Hulk Hogan is definitely not one on my radar and hasn't been for a very long time, but he's almost become a parody of himself in his old age. So really, he's tarnished his own legacy by becoming more of a joke than anything. And that's kind of on him.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree with Joey. Hogan is, I don't know, Hogan is the guy that as kids we looked up to, because wrestling then was very cartoonish for me. I was born in 1980, so I grew up watching Hogan, watching the Steamboats and all these guys, Junkyard Dogs, seeing all these big guys, not knowing that there was a such thing as the indies, not knowing that there's territory of wrestling. I wasn't aware of that. And I just felt like, you had WWF and then you had like NWA, and I felt like they were two vastly different type of places. Both, WWF seemed more satirized, very, very more animated. But then growing up and then being in the business at some point, I tend to have more respect for guys like we mentioned, Gypsy Joe, the Victor Bruisers, the Chris Michaels, the James Carvers, those cats like that. Bud Ellis, Cowboy Bud Ellis, rest his soul.
Oh
Guys
yeah.
like that really uh, paved the way and did things in the business. Donnie Don Fargo.
Oh yeah.
Uh, he Don Fargo once caught me in the back with a kendo stick, and I was not ready. Um,
That ain't no joke, brother.
but yeah, but those guys to me is who like I look up to in the business mainly more than I do enjoy the professional guys, the guys that've been on WWF or WWE and WCW, ECW. But the guys that are in the indies, man, like Derek Neal, that's still working, still doing their thing, man. I just gotta respect them. Respect them.
Oh, absolutely. And there's tons of guys, especially in these areas here, that paved the way for all kinds of indie wrestling, even today, like Jerry the King Lawler and Bill Dundee. Tracy Smothers was a guy I wrestled up and down with for a long time, and he was insane, but he was a very knowledgeable guy to hang around. You gain a
Unfault.
lot. Oh yeah, absolutely. Freaking Rick and Morton, all them guys. There's so many. Whenever you do jump from promotion to promotion, you always have a couple of guys that have been there and done it, and some of them aren't famous. Some of them aren't like the best known guys in the world, but you know what? They've been around. They've paid their dues, and you got a lot to learn from. There was a guy, and to this day, I still don't know his real name because we always just called him the Judge. And he was the manager. He managed Vic the Bruiser for quite a while,
I remember him.
and he was just called the Judge. And he played the most dastardly, nastiest heel that you could ever imagine out there in front of the crowd. But he was honestly the nicest, most respectful, caring guy I think I've ever seen backstage. So you got a lot to learn from all different aspects. And if you can absorb any knowledge from anything, I would even talk to referees and stuff. Any knowledge we could gain, we were all over it. And that's just kind of how it is. The more you absorb, the more you experience, the more you can grow.
I agree. The people like Terry England, those guys that really set that standard. I do recall, and I was gonna ask you this. So you mentioned like work the judge, which he was a great character. I do remember him. Being a very nice guy, even though to the fans he was straight a heel. He was the heeliest heel of them all.
Yeah.
Um, I remember uh, being able to meet Abyss. He came and worked down here, a few times. Well, once met him and Carlito as well, but I met Abyss, and you'll think that he's gonna be the meanest dude, but he is such a sweet guy.
Very
Um,
nice fella.
and that was leading to my question to you. Um, Two parts really. One is who of the biggest guys that you met? You can shoot if you want. That's fine. But who's the biggest guys that you met? Has been some of the nicest guys, whether they're face, baby, or heels. And also, who are some of the people that you met that kind of like felt like they were like the stuff and not really humble. If you don't, you can shoot if you want. It's up to you.
Oh, it's all good. Well, I'm all about showing respect, and I do have a few things about a few guys that I didn't have great interactions with. But as far as big guys that we met, me and my buddy, we had a couple of tryouts with TNA wrestling when they were in Nashville at the fairgrounds. So we got to meet all those guys back there, and there were a few of them that were more warming than others. Abyss, very nice fella, very very fun kind of guy to be around. AJ Styles, he was kind of one of them guys who liked to stay to himself. He wasn't real friendly with anybody outside. Christopher Daniels, very nice fella. You know, a lot of guys, they try to help you as much as they can, but there's some guys that don't give a crap either way. So, you know, those were some of the guys that were really nice. We met Mick Foley one time, and this wasn't actually when we were at a wrestling show. We were actually at a college thing in Bowling Green.
I was there. I was actually right there next to him. Go ahead.
That was like one of the best experiences for me as a fan and as a wrestler, because he was like super nice, super fun stories to tell. And I don't know, it was like meeting, like you said earlier, it was like meeting a cartoon character come to life. And that was a really touching experience for me and my buddy. My buddy has been like a fan of his for, I mean, ever. That's who inspired him to get into the business. And, you know, people like that's been great. We've done a few shows, big name like Lex Luger, and I might not be too popular on this one. Everybody loves Lex Luger, but we're talking about, you know, he's backstage begging for oxys and doing the Miss Elizabeth wave thing, and just, I don't know, he rubbed me all wrong. Didn't work worth a dang, and he just wasn't my cup of tea. Buff Bagwell, he's pretty much a spoiled whiner.
Pretty much his character.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's literally living the gimmick right now. But
yeah. He all he wanted to do was sit around, drink beer. He did his spot, and that was about it. Went backstage, drank beer, wouldn't even sign any gimmicks, do nothing like that. I was young and still training at the time, and seeing that, I was just, I don't know, I just didn't set right with me as a fan or as a aspiring wrestler. Glenn Gilberti, Disco Inferno, he was a pretty nice guy, real fun and easy to talk to. There was Rick Steiner, was real kind of standoffish guy, but you know, he wasn't rude. He came there, he did his job, he got paid well, and he went home. You know, I respect that too. Yeah. You know, some guys, that's what they're here to do. They're a draw, and I'm okay with that too. Yeah, you know, but those are some of the bigger names I've interacted with that I you know, won't get in too much trouble talking about, but
good names. I actually so I was in a class at Western at WKU. It was the only time they had a pro wrestling media class, and I was in that class, and we got to actually have Mick Foley come in. We ate lunch with Mick, and
oh, that's amazing.
And just talk to him about different things. He then he had that lecture, but I didn't. All right, so he had beef right now at that point with Ric Flair, and so I wrote like a little paper on the Von Erichs, the curse of the Von Erichs, is what I called it at that point, and I shared it with him, but I took a lot of my stuff from Ric Flair's book. I cited him as a resource. He said, "Yeah," he said, "You should get a different resource other than Rick." But but yeah, he was really sweet. Me and my buddy, we got to sit next to him while he sold his gimmicks and signed autographs, and we got to collect the money for him for his gimmicks. And then at the end of the night, he signed my book and then asked us, "Hey, do you want part of this pot? You know, like of the money?" And we said, "No, we'd rather take a shirt." I still have that shirt today. If I had the money, it would have been gone. I still have that shirt today, and I haven't got rid of it. It was, I don't know how many years ago that was, but yeah, it was a good experience just to be there. And we also got to see, we went to OVW, and I got to see Stevie Richards. He was eating a hot dog, but hey, it was pretty cool for me being an ECW guy. and I got to see a young John Cena and a young Brock Lesnar. That was pretty awesome. Wow. Yeah.
Last time I was at OVW, it was CM Punk's very last night. He was on the way to the big time. Matt, Capitelli, I believe his name was.
Mm-hmm.
It was his last night as well because of his brain injury. We got to talk to the boogeyman. That was an experience.
Ooh, how was that?
Al Snow was Al Snow was running the show at the time, and of course we were trying to talk him into a tryout, but there's a lot more loops you got to go through to get into OVW than just showing up and saying, "Hey, let us wrestle." So that didn't work out too well, but it was pretty fun meeting Al Snow. He was real nice and real respectful. He was not rude about anything, and the boogeyman was pretty cool dude to talk to. He's very animated, even just in normal conversation. And so that was pretty cool. So OVW holds a fond memory in my heart too. I get that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we down here we had a show and we met. I had the opportunity. I was a big fan of Carlito, in the WWE, and like actually he did a house show down here, and he was wrestling Shelton Benjamin, and me and my buddies was in the front row, and this is when Benjamin had a gimmick where he was a mama's boy.
Oh yeah.
And so I started. They started saying "Mama's boy, Mama's boy, Mama's boy." They started that like little, and I started a chant that said "Hoss is better," it just ribbing him on that, and then he got out the ring, and they came over to us and stared us down, and then Carlito got on the mic and was like, "Hey, I got two things to say. Hoss is better, and you are a mama's boy." And so it was like really, man, it was so cool. But yeah, I got to actually, working with my buddy and his promotion down here, I was able to get to see Carlito like behind the curtains. He's one of those guys like you mentioned that is he's a quiet guy. He's just there to get his money, and he wasn't not in a bad way. He was really friendly and stuff. And respectful, but he just was very quiet, and I get that.
Sometimes that's what it's all about, when you can accomplish making yourself into a big name, it's all about making them bucks, especially if you can relax and do it. Why not? I can't hate on a man for getting paid. There's ways to do it and ways not to, but I always thought Carlito was a fantastic athlete, very entertaining in the ring. And Shelton Benjamin, my goodness, what a fantastic wrestler he is.
Misused by WWE back in the day, man.
Oh man, him and Team Angle, I could watch that gimmick all the time. Him, Haas, and Angle, my goodness, they were great together.
I'm sorry, Brandon. Real quick.
Go ahead.
Real quick, you mentioned that you was a technical wrestling fan. I was a technical wrestling fan as well, like Angle, those guys like that. Who did it better? Bret Hart with the sharpshooter, or Sting with the Scorpion Deathlock?
Well, see, that's a tricky question. I, believe it or not, wasn't a fan of either one for a very long time. I went back and did a lot of homework on both of them in somewhat recent years and have developed quite a fandom for both. I personally like Bret Hart's sharpshooter. I mean, when I think of sharpshooter, that's who I think throwing it on. Honestly, I like Sting. Well, he had his little bit of flair to it, but no, not The Rock. But the sharpshooter, I definitely have to go with Bret Hart on that one all the way. He definitely had the technique, man.
All right, I'm going to ask my second part to the Hulk Hogan question.
You still on Hogan?
No, it was leading to this.
Is it about Mr. Nanny? What is
We
this?
talked about this. But you brought up politics. You personally, have you ever dealt with any of those kind of politics?
Oh, Yeah, absolutely. You'll have guys all the time trying to bury you, trying to go behind your back and do some crazy stuff, you know. Uh, I don't personally care for much for backstage politics, but there was a time where I was, I guess, a little bit more out of control than I should have been as far as the lifestyle, and I wasn't the most reliable person in the world, and I will admit that. And I'd have people all the time going behind my back and trying to get me in trouble. But I did what I needed to do, and there's times I've gotten in trouble with certain promotions, and there's times I've gotten my walking papers too. But you know what? I say the same thing every time: is I can work anywhere. It don't matter. I don't have to work here. I can work down the road, or I can work up the road. It don't matter. So backstage politics, they don't affect me much, my man. I kind of show my stuff in the ring, and my whole thing is I can cut a promo that'll cut you in half. So I don't deal with those kind of things, as far as I'm concerned. And especially the older I got and the wiser I got, I just avoided those kind of people altogether.
So
Good answer.
you've worked in the business as a worker, also as far as I'm understanding, you managed, but you also did some booking. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And matchmaking essentially. So how was that? How was that aspect of it? How was learning to be the guy? How was that for you to learn? Was it like a learning curve or something that you kind of naturally got into?
Personally, I was more interested in promoting aspect of it more than I ever was the wrestling aspect of it. But and that's starting out. But somebody told me, look, if you're gonna walk the walk, you're gonna have to learn how to do it. It said if you can't experience what the boys are experiencing, you're not gonna know what to do, how to book a show. You're not gonna know what buttons to push and what stories to tell. And that made a lot of sense to me. So I decided to become a wrestler first. And my whole aspiration the entire time was to get into promoting. So the whole time I'm sitting here planning for doing this promoting end of things. So as far as a learning curve, yeah, I mean, just with anything really, you think you have a handle on it, but really there's always something new to be thrown at you or something different. And everywhere does it kind of differently too. The big thing with me was trying to work my way around the athletic commission in Kentucky. That was hard because we're extreme style wrestling. We like to do outlaw kind of stuff, and they did not like that.
They don't like
So
blading.
no, they don't like that. I mean, at the time, we couldn't go outside of the barricade. We couldn't do nothing. No weapon spots, no nothing, unless it was a sanction type deal. And so we had a lot of fines and a lot of trouble with that because we just didn't want to listen, and we did what we wanted. So as far as booking, though, I personally enjoy it. I love telling a story. I love putting a narrative together. I mean, that's always been my bag. I've always been a storyteller overall, and that's been the main thing. If you can't tell a story outside of the ring and in between the bell, you don't have any business being there. And when we did do our promotion, that's what we surrounded ourselves with was storytellers. We found storytellers, we turned them into wrestlers. And that's every person on our roster we trained personally, unless we knew they were trained from somewhere accredited and we brought them in for, usually it was more of a gimmick thing, but we used homegrown boys. And sometimes it backfired on us. Sometimes you come up with a dud, but you know what? You have to push the strengths and hide the weaknesses. And that was what we were all about. So, it worked. It worked for me. Booking, I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do.
We found out, like, essentially my buddy Randall Shane, as so we used to do a lot of backyard, obviously. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and put it out there. We all did a little backyard. We all explored getting some posts and some ropes and putting it in the ground and saying, pretend like this is the ring, or having your first like CD player and you coming out to your song or whatever. We've all experienced that. We was doing that. We did a outside like a show, and actually people started showing up for us for our little thing that we was doing. And it, looking back, it probably looked so bad, but um, well, we was doing that, and then JW Wildfire, we used to go to his promotion. It's when it used to be down here in Bowling Green off of Third Street at Reed's Restaurant. He used to have wrestling in the back. Back then, TNT, Del Mann used to run it, but then eventually JW took over and started promoting from there. But he pulled Joey to the side, Randall. Sorry, I gave his government name. He pulled Randall from the side and to the side and told him, "Hey, man, y'all gonna hurt yourself out there, just doing backyard stuff." And like you said, pretty much sweet guy, but he did take their money, but taught them how to properly be in the business, and Randall hadn't looked back. I think he's officially retired. He's promoting down in Franklin, I think, but with James Carver. But it's just an experience. So I was going to ask you that when you first came out, how did your gimmick look, and what was your theme music?
Well, my gimmick at the very beginning, my very first match, I'll never forget the chant that was chanting me. I had this all white jogging suit, jumpsuit looking thing. It was, I had my pads and my boots and all my gear and stuff, my tape, but it was this white pants with blue stripe down the side, a white t-shirt that said, "Are you talking to me?" It was so cheesy, so generic. It looked like that guy that you create on No Mercy just to beat up. And I come out, and it was in this small town up in Oldham County. This is my first match ever. And I think you can see it in that really bad half Boston Crab picture I sent you. They chanted toilet paper at me. And I was expecting marshmallow or anything but toilet paper. They chanted toilet paper at me. I'll never forget that. And I came out as a heel. And I came out to Ozzy Osbourne's Perry Mason. I always thought these songs with these cool takeoffs, real slow build and then bam, bam, bam. I was obsessed with that. And so I was like, that sounded good to me. I obsessed over the song. It was almost Michael Jackson's Bad until I brought the CD to our commissioner at the time, and he looked at me kind of funny. So I was like, I guess I'll go with Ozzy Osbourne. I kind of bunked out of Michael Jackson. And I came out there. I was a heel. People hated me. And boy, they cheered their butts off when I got pinned for the first time. So yeah, I was toilet paper. It wasn't a great gimmick. I really had to grow into the rock star persona, and that was after years and months of. Did you drop out?
I'm still here.
Good deal.
I didn't
That
know.
was
I was listening to you, and I didn't even notice he was gone. Oh man,
I'm still here. I'm hearing you. You just can't see me. I accidentally kicked
that
the
was
camera.
over probably months and months and maybe years of trying out different gimmicks and different personas and things like that until I finally really came back to Jesse Idol and refined it. I was everything from garbage gimmicks to, it was, some of them were really, really bad.
But I'll let Brandon take over real quick. I just want to ask you a quick question. Who was your who did you work in your first match?
I worked my buddy William. His name was Blade at the time, and this was before the Blade on AEW and broke onto the scene. But he was William Hightower, good friend of mine. He's my road dog. we trained together, and they thought, well, it's a good idea to put them in a match together. So we get out there, and the promoter, he said, look, he said, don't mess this up. He said, if I see any sign of struggling or weakness, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to cue the music for manslaughter. Now, bear in mind, we're talking about 7 foot tall, had to have been 350, 400 pounds easy. He was a giant of a man. And he said, if you hear that chainsaw, manslaughter's going to come out and kill you guys. And I took it serious. I mean, I was terrified the whole match. Well, when I shot that half Boston and it looked as bad as it did, our promoter, Joe Bailey, stood up and it was about to go down, but Billy Black, a guy that was helping us at the time, he intercepted and made sure that we didn't get squashed in our first match. And it actually smoothed on out and worked out pretty well. But William Hightower, a.k.a. Blade, a.k.a. Elijah Heavens, very cool dude. That was my first match.
Well, since you brought it up, like failed gimmicks, I was mentally, I'm asking you mentally, for someone that's starting out, that the gimmick fails. What does that do to you mentally? Usually, I mean, what would it do to someone that's new mentally? First gimmick or second gimmick just flops.
Well, you know, Jesse Idol for me it never flopped, and that's why I don't know why I even went away from it. But I was wanting to experiment and do crazy things. As far as you know, it kind of depends on where you're at too. If you're in an environment, there's some places that some companies that I wrestled for that were very welcoming of crazy gimmicks, and the crazier the better. You quickly find out those are garbage companies because it's, you know, they want people named like Stupid Asshole and all that stuff. And yeah. And I was the janitor in that one. That went over real well. And it's not great for your confidence because you're basically trying to be even more like you're not, and you're trying to be cartoonish and nobody wants to take you seriously. And then you go up to a guy in the business and you say that's been working there for 17 years, and you go, oh yeah, I was Joey Nightmare the other night. I was the guy that had blood coming out of his eyes, and he's like, okay, well, I got to go over here and talk to this guy who actually looks professional and acts professional, you know. So that does take a toll. Yeah. Even at one point, I was wearing silly gimmicks like wigs and stuff like that to try to get over, and it was not getting over. I'll never forget the night I came out there as Six Amelia, and that was a failed Mexican gimmick. I won't get into it.
Were you on a hood?
I was in a partial hood. It was from the nose up, and yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all.
Wouldn't
I
work.
was a long lost cousin of Eddie Guerrero's that definitely liked the churros too much, but it definitely didn't get over. And we're in the middle of this shoot. It's for a federation in Clarksville that has long since demolished.
I remember that.
And we're in the middle of this shoot, and I had enough of the gimmicky wrestling, and I tore the mask off. I tore off the gimmicks, and I just started shooting on the mic as Jesse Idol. I said, I'm sick of these gimmicks. Jesse Idol's here, blah, 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 blah. And that's when I really started to come out more as my own gimmick. I took what I liked and what I knew and what I was, and I dialed it up to 11. And I became this, you know, insatiable butthead that was way too cocky to be cocky. So it worked, and that actually got over, you know.
Was that a work when you ripped off your gimmick and everything? Was that a work
absolutely.
in itself? Okay,
yep.
So okay, cool.
That was a work shoot all the way. That definitely wasn't planned. I was supposed to go out there and do my thing and you know, I was wrestling a guy named the Croc. You can imagine.
Well,
His finisher was the rock bottom number 2. Well, by the end of that match, I mean, I stiffed him quite a bit, and he needless to say, he didn't want to work with me anymore. But Jesse Idol gimmick was born. I went from fighting the guys that were literally the joke gimmicks on the card. From the next couple of weeks, I started fighting the guy that was holding the belt. His name was Rigor Mortis, and his gimmick was as stiff as it gets, which led to one of my better matches I've ever had, and it was a stiff as it gets match. We tore off all the bump padding and all the turnbuckles and everything like that, and we went out there and tore it up. I got DDT'd the first 5 seconds of the match, and I was literally a crimson mask, and it was the hard way. I told him, I said, you better bust me open on that first shot the hard way, and we genuinely had disdain and hate for each other. Bear that in mind too. So that entire time in Clarksville, in the Clarksville wrestling, was a shoot.
Does that make
I mean,
it better?
I had a blast.
Yeah.
Me and my buddy, we would literally show up whenever we wanted to. We would ride almost right up to the ring, because it was like, fairgrounds and things like that. We'd hold shows, so we had plenty of room to do things. We'd ride up to the ring. I would interrupt promos. There was no chains on me at this point, because I was done with the gimmicks. I knew where I wanted to go. And I even told this guy, I said, look, I want to promote. I said, if, we can do this. He's like, yeah, partnership, things like that. Then he started shooting on me behind my back. That's your backstage politics for you. And next thing you know, I was like, you know what? Cuffs are off, gloves are off, I'm done. And me and my buddy, we started shooting on the place. He was miserable, and I just decided I'm not going to be miserable. So I started shooting on the champ. I started just calling him out in promos, and any chance I got, I would sit in on commentaries, anything I could do. I would just get my face in the camera, and I would dog crap on Rigor Mortis. And he eventually responded, and he went face for the match. He was originally heel, and he turned face. And it got over like gangbusters. I mean, everybody was vested. Yeah, it was a good show.
I think I do remember Rick and Mortis. Yeah, I remember a guy named Damien Demento as well. I think he's still working somewhere around here, but not around here, just somewhere else. But yeah, that's it's amazing how you pretty much. It seemed like that promotion in Tennessee at the fairgrounds, it seemed almost like a ECW type of environment that was like had a rowdy fan base and everything. Did you kind of get that type of feeling being around like at that time in your career?
To be honest with you, I mean, there was a lot of loyal fans there that did get rowdy and things like that. But as far as the Clarksville wrestling, it's hard for me to put over, because it was such a touchy time in my career. But at the same time, it is what relaunched Jesse Idol. It is what the gimmick that I was born to do. It's what kind of lit that fire. So, I mean, in an odd way, I still have to give credit where credit's due. But there was a lot of trash, and the promoter, he was trash. He was that, and he was the champion. Any promoter makes yourself the champion. I'm sorry, it's not worth your salt in promoter.
I agree.
And
oh my goodness.
He called you out, Vince.
No, not just Vince. Not just
Shoot
Vince,
season's open.
Yeah, those are local. Like it's a big running thing. Like, why do you have to be the guy? Like, why why do you feel like you need to put the strap on you? And or there's people. I'm not meaning to shoot on no one. I'm going to try to be respectful and not say names. But there's people that have promoted, essentially had a business, had the professional wrestling environment, and turn around and pretty much put themselves over and think of themselves as Triple H, and they don't look nothing like Triple H. And
And are you
I'm
talking
gonna
about
just go ahead and
Jarrett?
say it, huh?
You talking about Jeff Jarrett?
No, not Jeff, not Jeff, not even Jeff. I'm
He
talking
put the
about,
title on himself.
yeah, I'm talking about. All right, the Midnight Mafia. There, I said it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Uh, there's a certain guy that was in there, not the other one. The other one was a sweet guy. Well, both of them sweet guys, but just one of them was just like didn't know the business, and essentially he saw himself as like first as a Shawn Michaels type of gimmick, but he doesn't look nothing like Shawn. Uh, I think he even went by last name Rose at one point. I'm not gonna throw too much dirt out there
Oh, don't
for
worry.
him,
I know exactly who you're talking about. It's all good.
yeah. And the thing is, man, whenever like someone like that pretty much say they own the ring or anything, they got any type of leverage, and they want to promote themselves to be that way. They're gonna do it to the detriment of the other guys that they got coming in. Like we wrestled a match where I was a manager for HNIC, and they try to put themselves over on HNIC. You know,
Yeah.
uh, Apollo, JB, was JB Thunder and Apollo. I totally forgot the guy's name all these years later, but it's just bad because don't try to make yourself that guy. You know, a good promoter. I imagine you as a good promoter know how to go ahead and take a back seat and make the other talent shine because it makes you shine. It makes you look good when you like you said that you would allow vocal guys to come out, and sometimes you have duds, but you at least was not afraid to test the waters and see what you got. And out of some of those duds, you probably produce a really good quality worker that people showed up and paid to see.
There's some guys that I would work with to this day, any day, that was brought up like that, definitely. You're definitely going to have your hits and misses, man. That's for sure. But I can't get behind self-promoting as far as if you're going to run a show, you got to run a show. It's all about giving back to the business and telling a narrative. I'm all about storytelling, and I never seen myself as the main star whenever I decided to step behind the curtain. But in the same respect, if not striving to be on top, what are you even doing there? So, it's all about knowing your place, man. And some people don't. Some people don't have enough respect for the business to give back. Some people don't think about it that way. They just think it's going to be me, and this is what I want, and I don't care whose neck I got to step on to get it. And maybe I was like that at some point in my life. I don't know. I don't feel like I was. Maybe somebody else would tell the story differently. But as far as whenever the promoting started, I was never champion. I was never in the spotlight. Did I wrestle? Of course. But did I get my butt kicked most of the time? You better believe it, because people like to see that, So that's just how it is.
Well, I got a question for you, Joseph.
Is it about Hulk Hogan, Brandon?
It's not about Hulk Hogan, all right? I asked my Hogan question. I got it out of the way. I had to bring up Hogan, all right? Because one of the very first times we talked, he brought up Hogan. And I defended Hogan. And I still will, but you are right about backstage politics. But I still respect the guy. But it's not about Hogan, Aaron. It's about Jesse Idol. What would it take to bring this character back in any shape or form? For anyone listening out there that knows you, would like to bring you back, what would it take?
Honestly, I've given a lot of thought to that, and I mean, once it's in you, and you're always gonna crave and strive to be in it in some form or fashion. You know, I think today a lot of things, with wrestling, it's going the cinematic route and things like that. I would love to create some type of web-based show with all cinematic. The wrestling is real, but focus more on maybe, the grit and the stuff, the backstage and the traveling. But make it like an SOA style or whatever kind of show gimmicks you're into. But as far as getting back in the ring or being involved in wrestling, definitely, if I can make a cinematic thing happen, that's the route I would choose to go, because I don't see me being able to tour the indies anymore. The lifestyle doesn't agree with my lifestyle now. I'm a family man, proud family man, 3 kids, beautiful wife, and I gave up the traveling and the stuff that goes with it. I'll just leave it at that. It ain't always great, and it's not hard to get into. Uh, so as far as the locker room life, I don't see myself crawling back into that. But if I could get back to the business by telling stories in a cinematic way, I would love that. Get a great group of guys, a nice crew together, and put on some type of episodic situation where we're telling a story, driving a narrative, and ultimately getting to a point. I think there's stories to be told, and I want to be a part of that. And I think I would definitely be on board with something like that.
You know, with you saying that, that reminds me of a bit of what got me into, like, you remember before AEW hit, I was a big fan of Being the Elite, watching them on YouTube, and I just
Love
felt
it.
like it was a better way of promoting, because they promoted their shows better than WWE was promoting their stuff. They
No,
promote, you know, they promote uh, matches and stuff and they have a great build up to it. That and really, you was like, oh man, and that's how I got really invested in the SCU or anyone else, like that, because that they did a really great job with the way they did it, because like you said, they did essentially cinematic. Uh, they did cinematic shows, episodic shows, and I think that it's really cool. And I think it'd be even better to see on the, like you said, on the indie level, with a couple guys like shooting, um, stylized wrestling, not only just vignettes but matches. So if I'm what I'm saying is I'm down if you need help, because I do
I
that.
do.
I
That's
shoot stuff. So
and that's the whole thing. I think the cinematic way is definitely. I think that's where it's headed anyway. You know, people want to see what's going on backstage more than they want to see what's going on in the ring, but they also want the action of the wrestling. So why can't you bring it both? And I don't want to do like cheesy WWF style cinematic stuff. Although the Boneyard match was okay,
mhm.
not exactly my cup of tea, but you know, um, Lucha Underground did it pretty well. They for a while it was pretty entertaining. And Being the Elite, I love it. I still watch it to this day. I would not be as big a fan of the Dark Order if it weren't for Being the Elite, because they know how to push them. I would like mine to be geared more toward a more of a dramatic type setting. I always had this dream of setting a show back in the territory days, like maybe back in the 60s and 70s, right before they start getting gobbled up. And I mean, it was serious back then. It was gritty and it was real. You didn't break kayfabe. You didn't go against your guys. You didn't jump territories, or it had deadly consequences. I mean, for God's sakes, there was guys getting stabbed in the showers over making deals and stuff.
Ooh, God rest you, Bruiser.
Exactly.
My goodness.
think there's stories to be told from that era. And I think, a group of outlaw wrestlers telling those stories and driving a narrative, I think that would be something to watch, at least in my opinion. And I think other people would enjoy it too. And,
It would make for really good TV, really good entertainment. Because, like before, so we had back in the day, we had, and I don't know how much time we got left, Brandon. I'm sorry, but we had, we had Body Slam. There's a movie back in the '80s
I
that
remember
that had Roddy Piper in it and the Tonga Kid and a couple other people. You see, Freddie Blassie had a cameo, Flair had a cameo, different guys had a cameo in that movie, but it still held to like kayfabe to the point of like, oh, I'm really injured, or I'm really this, or I'm really this, and this is going on, Whereas you didn't, you didn't really see that type of um, realism really until like say the movie The Wrestler. That
yeah,
was the first one
perfect
that
example.
that and I own that because I just felt like it is the anyone that's ever been in the business, ever took a bump in the ring, um, ever been ever took a chop and tried your best not to flinch when it happens. Everyone that hurt themselves, whether it's a kendo shot to the back or you landing on thumbtacks or anything or hurt yourself for the fans. That movie just really displays what it's like to be in the business, but also just the vibe inside the locker room. You know, as you said earlier, it's something that gets in your blood, and you just can't really let go of that. And but I understand what you're saying with doing it in a different aspect. You moving away from saying, "Hey, let's do it," say at the fairground. Instead, let's do it more cinematically. And I think your vision really works, and you're right. It does speak to what the future of wrestling is.
Thank you.
Oh, was that all, Aaron?
Yeah, yeah, Brandon. I'm sorry. I
I
look
thought
at you
there
and
was something
pointed
else
for you.
coming.
No. It's just no. It's just this that. It's just that I think that that's a good idea because those territory, those early wrestling days, um, where like you said, you might get hurt. I remember hearing stories from my grandmother. She was a big fan of wrestling. She remember going to see Tojo Yamamoto.
Oh,
Uh,
fantastic wrestler.
yeah, going to see him, going to see the Fargo brothers, and like there used to be wrestling out at Beach Bend here in town.
Oh,
She remember seeing Lanny Pop, Angela Papa, Macho Man's
yeah.
dad, and seeing Randy when he was younger and stuff like that. Lanny, uh, but she said that there was a time where someone in the fans tried to stab Tojo
Oh,
because like he was that good of a heel that they wanted to stab this man. They wanted to throw acid on this man. They wanted to cut him. She used to look at the TV and say, "Bite him, rip his eyes out," because that's the passion. But the wrestling back then was gritty, and we missed that. We missed that
it
type
was as
of.
real as it could get as far as we mentioned backstage politics. That was true backstage politics back then. It wasn't running and telling your promoter on this guy and getting slapped on the wrist or getting sent down the road. You'd get hurt, you'd get killed, you get injured in the ring, and I don't know. I really have been. I've always been fascinated with that end of things, and to think about watching something that would bring that to life. I'd be all in on that. It excites me to think about all the stories that could be told from that time, from that era of debauchery and lies and deceit, and like you said, showing the real injuries. Because yeah, there's gimmick injuries, but there's also the guy that may be selling the ankle, but his shoulder is so messed up. He's selling the ankle to get the attention off of the fact that his shoulder is about to fall off. I
Mm.
mean, I've seen it myself. So there's definitely a real grittiness and a real fun story to be told, I think, if it's done right. And that's I'm excited to see if it can pan out. myself.
I have a quick question before I turn it over to you, Brandon. I'm so sorry, Brandon. I love you, Brandon. Okay. So, do you feel that wrestlers should be protected as far as like, I know this controversial thought, and I know promoters don't like to hear it, but unions, are like, should wrestlers have some type of, we already have some type of fraternal order amongst ourselves, whoever's been in the business. But, but do you feel like there should be more protection for workers as far as uh, like a union type of deal?
See, that's tricky. See, when it comes to the indies, things are so touch and go. To have a union involved might involve a lot of different things that you wouldn't be able to get away with, as far as putting on shows here, there, or using certain guys on certain dates. I
Mm,
personally think it would muck the waters. But as far as protecting wrestlers, it's a hard call, man, because I grew up, whenever I was in it, it was, you kind of had to fight tooth and nail. You had to do for yourself, or you had a group of guys that watched your back. And, there's certain places I can go all over in this world, and have guys that watch my back because of the stuff I was involved in wrestling. But as far as unions was never a thing that crossed my mind. I never felt like what I was doing wasn't protected, so to speak, because I produced and the guys I ran with produced. Uh, if you do your job, I don't guess you need to be protected in that sense. But there's also a lot of guys that would think differently, and that's, I fully respect that and things like that. I was trained by a lot of old school guys. Every guy I was trained by was pretty old school. They taught us old school, and that's how we think, and that's how I still think to this day. If you're a good promoter, you'll protect your guys. If not, my suggestion to you is move on down the road and find yourself a promoter that will, because they're out there. But there are ways to go about doing things, and paying your dues. That's the best way to protect yourself, in my opinion, in this business. Pay your dues, gain your respect. That's how you get your protection.
I
That's
agree.
just my opinion, though.
Brandon?
That's good thoughts. Okay, I'll give you one final thought, one final question. Aaron kind of stole some questions from me though, but it's all right. That's good. We think alike, Aaron. um, you seem like you've been a trailblazer in the Indies, and I wouldn't say you have any regrets with anything. But I had a final question actually that I wrote down. Aaron didn't take it. It's kind of like, well, what is the biggest challenge since you started, you've retired and everything? What do you think the biggest challenge at the time was? Like, was it going through the physical pains at times? Was it the mentally tough to, see other people playing politics, you not getting pushed the way you thought you should, or, being away from your family? Was that the toughest part? Like, what was the biggest challenge in going out there every weekend or whatever for you personally?
For me personally, pain was kind of secondary to everything with me. I have always been fortunate enough to have a pretty high tolerance for things like that. But the mental was hard, leaving every week, coming home, leaving. Sometimes I wasn't able to take my wife with me. Sometimes I was. That made it better. But, you know, seeing a lot of guys around me, it's a very destructive business. Um, as far as not just your body and mind, but your relationships, the people you come across. You see a lot of death because a lot of guys are real hard on their bodies. You know, it's no secret that drugs and alcohol are a very popular thing in those circles. And you see a lot of guys go down a lot of dark roads, and that's probably the hardest thing. You know, I've seen guys overdose. I've seen guys getting fights so bad that you know, they're missing certain parts of their anatomy and body and things like that. And I've seen guys break. I've been there a few times myself on different aspects, but that's really probably the hardest thing is being in that environment. It's so destructive, and you do have, if you can surround yourself with a good support group, that's great. I had one guy never left my side the entire time. I mentioned him several times. William Hightower. He stayed by my side the whole time, and thank God for that, because who knows where we could have ended up. There's been times we've had to call each other to get each other out of jams. Hey, this guy wants to suplex me off the top rope to the outside, and he's hopped up on God knows what. You got to come here and help. We've done it. But there's also times we ran around like packs of wild dogs and been in bar fights and hurt people and things like that. And I'm not that I'm proud of it, but there's people in my life that I've hurt on purpose or in the heat of the moment or in self-defense, whatever the case may be, that I got to live with that. That's my ghosts and my demons. And there's other demons and ghosts that we have to live with as wrestlers, or not just wrestlers, but entertainers or anybody in that lifestyle. Being on the road's not easy. Being away from your family's not easy, and you make decisions based on that uneasiness. And then you end up, in turn, having to live with those decisions, you know. I was never unfaithful or anything to my wife. But I was a very violent person, and I've calmed down a lot. My kids, when they were born, of course, that saved my life. I changed my entire narrative. I was told, come off the road, stop the bull crap, get your head together, and that's what I did. Some guys, it ain't that easy. I don't know why. I can look in my kid's face and I can tell you that's the easiest decision I ever made. But it's the destruction. That's the hardest part, is watching it, being a part of it, and knowing that you've caused some of it in your life.
Yeah.
Amen. Brandon, you can close this out, bro.
All right. Well, Joseph, I thank you for joining us on our 90th episode. Really did appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, a lot of informative things you told us. Aaron left, I guess.
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
I'm still here.
I had a blast, fellas. I had a real good time, man. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
It's a pleasure just to meet somebody else that's been in the business, but you know, you've done more than I've ever could even dreamed of, and it's just and seemed like a really humble guy, and it's a pleasure just to you know, kick it with you and hear your stories.
Well, I appreciate that. I had a real good time, man, and I hope maybe going forward and get to know you a little bit better on, and maybe we can share some more stories down the road, man.
No doubt. Well, so I guess I'll close it out. Thank you again for joining us. It seriously was our pleasure to get your story out there. Hopefully it helps people that are getting into the business and don't take some of those roads that they don't have to. But yeah, thank you. And stay tuned for next week. I think we got Joe
Castro.
Castro. He's going to be interviewing. We're going to interview him. Yeah, I'm nervous. It happens. I tell you what, though, that story got to me, man. That story got to me. It hit me hard, man. Really did. So I'm a little nervous about it. But I thank you for joining us, though, man. I know I've said it 3 times in a row, but I really do. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Absolutely, man.
So,
Uh,
like I said, thank you.
All right,
But,
let me help Brandon out here.
you need to help me out.
He's spinning. All right, Aaron Whitlow,
Brandon Spivey.
and we are the Markout Movie Podcasters. We thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And Joseph, is there any place you want them to kind of find you if they want to hear a little bit more about your story? Do they need to go anywhere to locate you?
uh, just Facebook's all I know. I don't do a whole lot of social media and stuff. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, things like that. Joseph Monk.
It works for us. Well, we thank you for coming, and I don't know if this is wrestling with the marks. It felt like it. It's great. We thank you for listening, and Brandon is looking for the button to stop the recording. I don't know if he ever found it, but okay. I thank
I
you,
haven't hit
Joseph.
it yet.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. All right, it's
No, Brandon, you just got rid of Joseph. Still recording. Stop recording, Brandon.